Greenland is the birthplace of the kayak. Inuit hunters here developed the kayak 5,000 years ago to be a one-person sealed water craft for hunting and traveling by sea. For years, I dreamed of paddling in the remote and isolated seas where the kayak was born and where Inuit cultural traditions and the modern world still exist for the moment. I, along with my friend Harry Duncan, wanted to venture to this land to experience for ourselves this wild landscape, meet native Greenlandic people, and paddle in the shadows of giant glaciers and icebergs in much the same way that Greenlandic hunters have done for centuries. Before we get into our journey of 2023, it's helpful to first understand a bit about Greenland to put the photos and videos that we'll share here into perspective. So fact number 1, Greenland is not green, it's white. Greenland is the world's largest island, covering approximately 836,000 square miles, with a vast majority covered by a thick ice sheet, which is miles thick and over 1 million years old in many places. The Greenland ice sheet is one of the final remnants of the Earth's last ice age. The ice here represents about 8% of the world's total fresh water, and it's melting due to climate change. And it's melting fast. Greenland is currently experiencing a net loss of 270 billion tons of ice each year. Accelerating ice movement is occurring in many locations along the perimeters of the ice sheet, but dramatic evidence of the ice loss is visible near the small town of Ilulissat. This is where the colossal Jacobshavn Glacier is shedding ice into the 20-mile long and 4-mile wide Ilulissat ice fjord. The icebergs and the ice-choked fjord is one of the Earth's most dramatic natural spectacles. Ice loss here accounts for approximately 10% of the annual freshwater loss from Greenland's ice sheet. Fact number 2, the sun does not set in the summer. Greenland is located near what we refer to as the North Pole, and as such, the majority of the country sits well above the Arctic Circle. This means that for portions of their summer, the sun never sits below the horizon and daylight is perpetual. The sun simply circles the sky on an imaginary racetrack. In winter, however, the situation is reversed. The sun never appears, and for months the land is submerged in darkness, lit only by the stars and the ever-present northern lights. This northern latitude and proximity to the North Pole also makes most of Greenland cold, even in the summer. The typical high temperatures that we experienced on our trip were around 45 degrees Fahrenheit, with a low around freezing. The ocean is a chilly 36 degrees. With those facts now in place, let's move on and answer a few questions. Question number 1, what boats did we use? Now, even though the ancient Greenlanders invented the kayak, kayaks aren't readily available to visitors in Greenland for personal use. For that reason, we brought our own. Our portable kayaks are hand-manufactured in Canada and made up of aircraft aluminum pieces, which make up a rigid frame, which is then assembled inside a modern fabric or a hypalon skin. When assembly is complete, the boats go from being in a bag checked as luggage on an airplane to a fully seaworthy and rugged expedition sea kayak. These kayaks share much in design with historic Greenlandic kayaks in the sense that they have the same boat design, are made of a rigid frame which is covered by a stretched waterproof skin. Traveling with kayaks and gear, however, is not simple, easy, or cheap. Visitors to northern Greenland are relegated to small prop airplanes and helicopters to move any significant distance. This means that getting into Greenland to rural destinations and back again will require a daisy chain of airplane and helicopter connections. If anything happens to a single connection anywhere in the chain, there will be long delays and strandings possible. Question number 2. Where did we paddle? Our time in Greenland was really divided into 2 different regions, each defined by a unique geology, topography, and by its people. Initially, we spent 4 days paddling in and around Greenland's 3rd largest town of Ilulissat, where 4,600 people and 7,000 sled dogs live adjacent to the sea, where glaciers have reduced the landscape into relatively small hills and valleys. Ilulissat is where people embark on small planes and helicopters to get to the small rural villages to the north. Ilulissat is also the place to visit the aforementioned Ilulissat Ice Fjord and witness the natural spectacle there. Once we left Ilulissat, our primary region of interest was Uummannaq Fjord, located about 100 miles north of Ilulissat. We spent 10 days paddling here amongst the vertical cliffs, dramatic rugged wilderness and glaciers, which fill the waterways with icebergs and ice at unimaginable rates and scale. The primary challenges of paddling here were isolation, wind, finding suitable camp spots, collapsing icebergs, and waves resulting from large glacial calving events. By starting in Uummannaq, it was simply a matter of linking long paddles on our maps to get us to the things that we wanted to see. These included 2 small isolated villages, vertical walled cliffs, and 2 large glaciers. Our route ended up as this. On day 1, we paddled 20 plus miles from Uummannaq to the small village of Sadut. On day 2, we pushed from Sadut into the entrance of the Uummannaq Glacier Fjord, and after a hard day of paddling and wind. We spent day 3 here and attempted unsuccessfully to complete a long hike up onto the ice sheet. Day 4 found us paddling to the Uummannaq Glacier and then camping nearby after not finding anything safe next to the glacier. On day 5 and 6, we paddled to reach the small village of Ilulissat, where we camped adjacent to the village and resupplied. On days 7 and 8, we pushed through 2 long days to reach the camp next to the Store Glacier, where the ice sheet towers over the glacier, which then pumps huge icebergs into the sea. And finally, on days 9 and 10, we paddled northwest to a small cove relatively safe from icebergs. This was the end of our paddle. From there, we were picked up by a boat that we had hired from Uummannaq to save us from 3 really long days of paddling to complete the circle. Question number 3. What was a typical day like on the water? Each day on the water followed a very typical routine. With only a few exceptions, each day was similar in schedule, menu options, long paddles, avoiding large icebergs, scanning the horizon for landings to rest our weary bones, searching for reasonable camps, and other menial tasks. Here's a quick review.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Finally, let's introduce the people of Greenland. Denmark laid claim to Greenland in 1261 and has exercised some form of colonial rule here for the last 700 years. In 2009, however, Greenlanders gained control over their internal affairs and now partially self-govern. Denmark retains control over Greenland's international affairs and its abundant natural resources. There are approximately only 56,000 people who call Greenland home, most on the west coast. 90% of Greenlanders are native to Greenland and are of Inuit heritage. But over the last several generations, and particularly in the north, Greenland people have awakened a movement to revive their language, traditions, and culture. Greenlandic youth are in the midst of this cultural reawakening. So let's now shift to the images and video of our Greenland experience as we hear the words and music of Greenland's own Joseph Tarek. He speaks to the universal restlessness of youth and a resurgent Inuit heritage.
Manua porfeqartuarluta kisianniluajorteqartuarluta nikikkuta taavassumun inuusutukukussugun taavamiuninnangaingerlalarlanga qangatagama alalagama alakualagama aasin nikikkuta taavassumun puyortalarpungatakun anana nikikkuta taavassumun Atasi topungataku Atata Amma Asuli pilata Asuli pilata Asuli pilata Asuli pilata Para keratarulorlunga immakami pequerulorum arlan skantafissa inusutukukusu asulipilarta timitikilarpa qanikilarta soqutava kontu annikilarpat skantafissa 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 nikikkutatavassumun Atasi topungataku Atata Inusutukukusugun Asuli pilata Asuli pilata Asuli pilata Asuli pilata Para keratarulorlunga immakami pequerulorum arlan skantafissa inusutukukusu asulipilarta timitikilarpa qanikilarta soqutava kontu annikilarpat skantafissa 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 nikikkutatavassumun Atasi topungataku Atata Inusutukukusugun Asuli pilata Nikikkutatavassumun Asuli pilata 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 Taavamiuninnangaingerlalarlanga qangatagama alalagama alakualagama aasin nikikkutatavassumun Puyortalarpungatakun Anana Nikikkutatavassumun Atasi topungatakun Atata Hatupara keratarulorlunga Imma kami pekueruloruma Arsan skantafissa
Inusutukukusu
Asuli pilarta timiti kilarpa Kani kilarta Sokutava kontu anni kilarpat Skantafissa 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 Skantafissa
Nikikutatawa sumol
Atasi topunga taku Atata
Inusutukukusu
Asuli pilarta
Nikikutatawa sumol
Asuli pilarta
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 Nikikutatawa sumol
Asuli pilarta
Inusutukukusu